let's begin. So today I'm going to remind you first about this exercise for this Friday, where you have to draw a mock-up of your future software. So you can do that in some electronic format. I use this PowerPoint to make this drawing, and basically I'm showing how the application will look like in the different screens that will exist in your idea. And you can also make it by hand if you want, but I recommend having something that looks a little bit like a real application there. And I'm going to do this today. So today I'm going to implement this kind of application. It's a tracking application. It will track your location, and it will record the trajectory, or this kind of route. And we will store this in the memory of the phone somehow. And then we also have the possibility to browse the collection, so to see what have we recorded in the past. And today will be in HTML5. Tomorrow we will try to do the same thing in native Android. And at some point I will also teach you how to make the HTML5 application into Android application directly. So we will see how we can build 3 different applications that do more or less the same thing, and we can run them in different ways. For that, I will keep this tab open to look at this image from time to time. And we will not start from scratch today. So we will start from an application that I made this morning, and I'm going to show you how it works. It should be very similar to what you have seen in the past, because it was what we did last week and what we did a couple of weeks ago. So the HTML file looks like this. It's pretty simple. It uses the Google Maps API here, and the key is the one that I got last time. If you copy this and you plan to modify it, it's a good idea to enter your own key here, so that you don't run out of free calls from Google. So if everybody would start to use this one, then it's like Google will think that the same application is in multiple places. So you should keep that in mind. And then 3 other JavaScript files which we will take a look at, and CSS file. So this is the first time that I'm including the styles in an external file, just for cleanliness of the code. The CSS is the same one that you have seen before. It just makes the map on the full screen, and the body not to have that margin that I don't like very much. And now let's go to the main file. So the main file contains a main function, and if we go back to this HTML, we see that the callback, when the Google Maps is loading, it's going to call this main. So this is the function that will be called when the Google Map is done loading, and it's doing some things that you have seen before. It's instantiating the map in this div that we have here, and creating a marker on this location, and also creating a polyline, a line, but there is no path here yet, so it's just a placeholder. It's going to be red and somewhat transparent, but at the moment I'm not drawing anything there. There are no points to be drawn. And then some magic call here to initialize geolocation. So we will see what that is, and if it fails, we will get a warning. It will say that there is a problem, that you don't have geolocation. So this, very similar to what we did last time, and the map, the marker, and this polyline are global variables there. Now, location handler is another file that exists here. This should also be something that you remember from our first lecture, the one where we found out our coordinates from the geolocation component in HTML5, and if you remember, we got the location, and then when we get it, the callback to the function is this onLocation update. What we did before is we simply wrote to the console the latitude and longitude, but now what I'm doing is I'm creating this LAT-LNG object in Google, from Google Maps, so basically latitude and longitude, and I'm setting the marker and the map to focus on this whatever new location we are getting from the location services. So that's it, really. The last file is something I will speak about soon, but what it means is that we are getting the location from the browser, and we are putting the marker and the map to focus on this location that we obtained from the browser. And this here is something you haven't seen before. It's the only thing you haven't seen before here. And you will notice the same callback function, onLocation update. So this call means that it gets the location, but this one here means that it keeps getting the location. So as your location is changing, I'm going to call the same function. Basically, it means that I'm going to put the marker again at the new location and the map again at the new location. So, and a few parameters here, you don't have to worry much about them. It just means that try to get as accurate position as possible. So let's see how the application works. And now we have a problem. I'm in Science Park, but so it's putting the marker there. If you remember, we had this Superman marker, so I decided to keep it, even though it's not in my mockup. I'm just going to make it better than the mockup. So I still decided to keep that marker from last time. But how do I test? So this is a real question. So I'm going to build a location-based application, and am I going to run outside with the laptop while I program and see if it's really working? So I did something. I installed into Chrome an extension. You can Google it. It's called this manual geolocation extension, and it's right here. So if you just Google for this, and maybe it's going to point you to the application on the Chrome Web Store, and it's this thing right here. So when I open it, it's going to look like that, and basically it's going to let me move this marker somehow on this small map to the right, and then at some interval, I think it's about 4 seconds, I'm not exactly sure how it counts it, then the browser will react, and the browser will think, okay, he really moved at that new location. So I am somehow faking my location, but I'm simulating that it is indeed moving in the outside world. So this is something that we will use now to enable us to develop and to test without moving outside. And I just want to mention that there are many other of these tools out there, other extensions, and it's not the only way you can test such applications. We will see later how we can use the emulator in Android Studio, how to test location-based applications while sitting down. Okay, but anyway, this seems to work. So again, what it does is every time the location is changed, our code says that I want to call this onLocation update function and move the marker and the map to the new position. Okay, so that's something, but let's begin the real thing, because this was almost uninteresting. You already know how to do this. Okay, before we start, just mentioning that this measurement.txt JavaScript file is the Haver sign distance. So I think also maybe in the second lecture we had how to compute the distance between 2 points, and these are the 2 points. I just pasted everything we done there, and we will use it later today at some point, but at the moment it's only included, but I'm not calling any functions from there. So yeah, okay. So back to the mockup now. What do we want to do? Well, we see that our application has multiple buttons, like these track button and the stop button and save, delete, some kind of collection button there, and buttons here to navigate through the root collection. So let's prepare for this. We have multiple screens, and to do that I'm going to go here where we have our main function, and I will try to define them as this enumeration type. JavaScript doesn't specifically have it, but you will probably understand what I'm doing. So let's define our screen types. So what will we have? We have our main screen type. Let's give this a value of 1. Our tracking screen type, the value of 2. Our, let's call it publishing screen. This is going to be where I decide to save the root or to delete the root. You can extend to put maybe some Facebook publishing or whatever there. And then our collection screen. So this is going to be where I can go through the roots that I already recorded. And now I'm going to need a variable that is going to know what screen I am on. So we begin with the main screen. So I just initialize this variable with the value of the main screen. So I'm now using this just to point to the different screens that we have. And now a tracking app usually has to record the root. So let's make also a variable for that. Let's call it root. And I'm just going to use a very basic object for this. I'm going to say that the root is going to be an array of points. So that's going to be that. And now I also want a collection for the collection screen. So this collection is going to be a set of roots. So we want to see on the collection screen here first the first root, and then the second root, and then so on. So for this I'm also going to use an array object, but this will not contain points, this will contain roots. So this will be an array of roots. And we need also a pointer here to know which root in the collection we are looking at. So let's call it index for the collection, and let's just set it to 0 for the moment. So nothing too fancy. So these are just variables that we will later use. But if we go back here, we see that interface changes need to be done. So we need to define these buttons somewhere. And you do that in HTML. So I'm going to go back to the HTML, and I'm going to write a region for these different components. A new item here. I'm still going to use a div for it. And let's start with the first button, the track button and the collection button. So let's see how that will work. So button, let's just call it start. And collection. Okay. So this is already something I usually like to test immediately after I implement something to see what really happens there, what we have there. And now I see that it's not there. So I refresh the page, but I don't see my new buttons. You can always inspect what you have here with this from this elements field in the developer tools. So here we have the map. It's just fine, but our new div, where is that? You see in the bottom left corner, hiding this Google logo here. It seems to be there, so it's outside of the page by default. So the map takes all the space, and then after map takes all the space, where does this fit? So we want to move it up from there. I'm going to give this new div some different CSS properties here. Let's make its position to be absolute. So this way we will be able to modify its x and y coordinates on the map. I'm going to tell it to be from the bottom a value of 10% away from the bottom. So I'm using percent values because I want this app to work on different screen sizes. If I will put here 100 pixels, and if your screen is 50 pixels for some reason, it's going to go on the other side. So 10% it's always going to guarantee that it still fits into the screen. And I don't want them on the left. In my mockup I said I want them to be aligned in the center, so the text align attribute here should do something about that. Yes, but also combined with the width attribute. So the width, it's going to say that I want the width to be the full size of the screen. You can see now when I'm highlighting here. But the text align attribute keeps the buttons in the middle part of the screen. Now, let's take a moment to rest and see what we do here. We take these values. I decided that they are good enough for me, so I'm going to move them somewhere in our CSS file, and I'm going to say that okay, these will be useful, and they will go for our let's call it controls div. So we don't have it yet. I'm going to save it, and here I have to name that this is the controls div. So now if I refresh the page, it does remember that the start and collection buttons are not anymore outside of the screen, so it's still able to we are still able to see this. Okay, now actually what I wanted to show before, a really cool button in this developer tools, toggle device toolbar. If you press it, you're going to see how your application is going to look like on a Galaxy S5 or on a iPad. Wow, this is kind of, the start and collection buttons, they are not really what you expect in such an application, unless it's some very high precision application. So the size of those buttons is not what you would expect, right? Okay. Different ways to handle this, but the best way I would say is to make a class. Let's make a class, a button class, and give it to the start button, and then give it also to this collection button. Now, what I want them to contain in this what I want to do with this button class is to give it a style that looks good on different kind of devices, on different kind of screen sizes. So let's try to do that. I'm going to think about the properties here. So let's say that I want to have a fixed width, because in my mockup all the buttons had kind of the same size there. I'm going to put a value for the width to 30%, and let's put also some padding. So let's put a padding of 4% in this example. Okay, padding means that the text is not fully reaching the margins of the button. So Yeah, so the padding is this yellow region around the text box. So you see, if the padding wouldn't be here, then the buttons would look like this, and I want it to be more clickable, basically. Also, I don't like the font size. Font size, we have some constants here. So XX large, XX small. They are quite useful, but I don't like them very much. And the reason is, here I'm going to enter this responsive view, where I'm going to have this possibility to really put any size of the screen. And you see the size, the start and collection buttons have the same font size, even if this is becoming smaller or bigger. I would like that start and collection text to have a font size that also gets smaller. So how do I do that? It's something a bit more tricky. You might have not heard of it. Instead of putting here pixels or some other unit, I'm going to put VW. And VW is a unit that is proportional to the width of the viewport. So it's something that you can practice with and see how it goes. But you see that in this way, the buttons are going to modify their size and the font size according to our screen. So Google these VW, VH measures for the size of objects. If you're interested, they are very useful when you're building applications that you want to be device friendly. Okay, now collection, way too big text there. Let's just put it all for the moment, because in my mockup you don't even have the text there because I think it's too long. And I didn't add yet to the CSS value the font size. So yeah, check these units. Here you can put also pixels, but again, pixels have the same problem. They will be fixed and not look good there. Okay, and let's fix this to the Galaxy S5 to have something there. Okay. Right, so I think I'm happy with that. Let's move on to the stop screen, and then this publishing screen, and then the collection screens. So back to my HTML. Let's now say that this is the start screen. So the start screen contains the controls for the start and collection buttons. So I'm going to make a new div with the ID of start tracking controls, and this div is going to contain that. Now I'm just going to copy it to the bottom, and I'm going to say another div for the stop tracking controls. It's only going to have the stop button, so this stop tracking controls are going to be this screen. It only has the stop button there, nothing too fancy. Let's make also this publish controls. Let's say I'm going to copy this one again. Okay, and it had the options to save and to delete. Right. And finally, we have our collection controls. So this is a bit more complicated. It has two buttons here, buttons on the left to go to the previous route and to the next route, and some text there that says which route you are viewing from the collection. So let's call it let's call it collection controls, and have a button for left, a button for right, and in the middle I'm just going to use a span object, and I'm going to give it an ID. It will be useful later, so let's just say that we will refer to this as the root index, and we can give it a value of 0 at the beginning, so we are watching the 0th root in this collection. So yeah, okay, so this is something, but now we also want to put functions for these buttons. So we want our buttons to do something when we click them, right? Okay, let's put placeholder functions for this. So I'm going to have the start button start tracking. So this function doesn't exist yet. We will have to implement it once we are done with this screen. The collection button should also do something, maybe view collection. Now the stop button basically will be the stop tracking. The save tracking. Delete tracking. And then the left and the right here are also going to be important. I don't know, maybe move collection left or something like that. You can practice your naming skills later if you try this code by yourself and maybe improve my selections. But and the right button will move this collection to the right. Now we can define these buttons somewhere. Because they will all be controls, I would choose to make a new file here. A new file, we will call it controls.js, and I would write these different functions in that file, and also I would remember to include it, because otherwise the page will not know where I'm pointing to. So let's save this HTML file and go back to and open our new file, this controls, and start to put content there. Before that, let's take a look at our page. So, oh my, okay, so something is there, but definitely I don't want to see all those buttons at the same time. It could work, but it's blocking all my maps, so I want to hide some of the buttons from view. Let's see how we could do that. We go to the controls, and I'm gonna say that let's have a function called hide controls. So let's hide some of them. Let's hide the stop, the save, everything that we don't need. We don't need there. And now document get element by ID. It was start tracking controls style display. Oh my god, none. Okay, I'm missing here a semicolon, quotation. This is difficult. Anytime you have something like that, try to simplify. So if I'm going to have to write this for everything there, it's going to take a very long time. So I'm going to make a function that says hide the whatever I'm going to give as an element name, and then I'm just going to call it with hide there, right? So I don't want to overcomplicate my call. my code. I'm also going to hide the stop tracking controls, the, what did we call them, the publishing controls, or no, it was publish controls, and also gonna hide the collection controls. Okay, great. I'm gonna save it. I'm gonna refresh that page. Nothing happens, but I can always test if the hide controls function is here. I can test it in the, yeah, so they went away. That's quite useful. But let's have a function for initializing the controls. So initializing the controls means I want to be on the main page. Let's call it shorter. Sometimes it's easier to write less. So what I want to do, first I want to hide the controls, and then I want to show the start tracking controls. How do I show something? Well, I don't have the function yet, but I will. And here I'm going to put a block. So again, avoiding that I don't want to write a long line anymore. Right. Now, how about the rest of the functions? So we had here start tracking, view collection, stop tracking, save tracking, and delete tracking, and then something with the collections there. So, start tracking. First, I want to get just the layout moving. These are really helper functions, so I'm going to move them down for the moment. So what will happen when I press start tracking? Well, when I press start tracking, whatever controls are there, I want to remove. So hide controls will remove everything, but I want to show now the stop tracking controls. So once I have started tracking, I want to give the possibility to stop the tracking. So that's the first thing that should happen here. And then, well, let's have a to-do list here for actually start tracking. So we will need to start to record points somehow into our memory. But we will do that a bit later after we get the layout moving. Now we also have this view collection function. So the view collection function was here by this call button. And what does that do? Well, that one is going to show our collection controls, again after hiding all the other things. Possibly it should also show the first root maybe. So this is also going to be a good idea to do with one click, open it, but also display something. Now, stop tracking button. What this one does is it actually shows the publishing controls. So when you press the stop tracking, we want to go to this screen. So I want to see the save and the delete buttons. Okay. And now the save tracking. Well, save tracking is going to do something. It's going to save the tracking into the memory, but then it's going to go back to our main screen. So after we press save, I don't have here the drawing well done, but you can't do anything here but start to track again. Maybe it's the most logical thing. So after I press save, maybe I want to continue to record the new trajectory. So it's after the route is stored into phone, it's missing an arrow going all the way there. So actually, I'm going to say here init controls. So the first function that was showing the start tracking controls, I'm just going to recall that one. And the delete, I don't want to save it into the phone, so it will just go away and then it will init the controls. So just as a small test of what we are doing, I'm going to go back here, I'm going to refresh. Init controls. So now I have the start and the collection buttons there. If I'm going to press the start, I'm going to have a stop. After I stop, I can save or I can delete. If I delete tracking is not defined. Oops. So start, stop, delete. Okay, now again start, stop, save. Okay. Collection has the left and the right. Left and right are undefined for the moment, so I'm getting a nice warning there. And I'm stuck forever. So it seems that I'm missing this back button. So you see that I can't go back to the start screen unless I need to implement a back button there. That's kind of necessary if I want my application to not be in this one page forever. Okay, so let's go back to our main HTML and put also a back button in our collection controls. So here, so I'm going to give it the same class, so it looks basically the same. On click, let's say exit collection, but really I don't think we need this because it's basically init controls again. So when you exit the collection, you will go back to your main screen. So let's not add a new function for no good reason. It would just do the same thing. And this one will be called back. And we have a small issue here because we want it on the top of the screen. So I'm just going to try something. I'm not sure if it's going to work. So I'm going to inline a style here. I'm going to put it at a fixed position, 10% from the top and from the left. 10% from the left. Yeah, let's see how it looks like. So now I'm going to go to the collection controls. I have a left here that stopped working, a back button to the top left. Okay, so for some reason the left button stopped working, some error there, but the back seems to work okay. So oh yeah, this button here, it's missing a closing tag. So I'm going to save it again. Collection. Now everything seems okay, and I can still come back from where I left. Now let's look at this a little bit more. I'm not going to teach you how to do this icon for the moment, but let's speak a little bit now. I want to talk a little bit about what is this application, who it will be useful for, and maybe come up with some answers, and after that we have a 10-minute break. So I'm really okay, maybe I ask you a question. So who do you think this application is going to be for? Like, who is our target audience? This is really something that I can't stress enough how important it is. You might say these sports enthusiasts, somebody doing that. The moment we put Superman in our thing there, it's not anymore for taxi drivers. It's not the main target app for them. So we narrowed our target audience to really sports tracking people, even if we know it or not. We also somehow limited it to DC universe, even though it's not necessarily the case. So Marvel is a little out. You could also think about maybe some anime characters or whatever. You, knowingly or not, made the application more specific, more targeted. The text here is English. Your target audience is also English speakers. Of course, somebody with such a limited amount of text, right? Anybody could use it. Even if you don't know English, you learn that, okay, this one starts it with the one button there, and then you will remember what it does. But really, it is aimed at English speakers. If you can replace all of this text with icons, right? Something that people know what it will do. For example, maybe I think this is quite intuitive for many people, meaning this combination on-off button. So it could be one way of doing it. Then what you have done basically is you have removed one button that would need to be translated into many different languages if you want to target a larger audience. So the target audience is something that should be considered always in your mind. You don't want to make an application that is too general for too many people, because then it's going to need more clicks. It's going to need more things that what the people are comfortable with, and they will look for a more narrowed application. Now, kind of a question, rhetorical question. I'm kind of on the schedule, but what happens if you put here, instead of save and delete, what happens if you put a Facebook button? Yeah, you can put it, but what happens with your target audience? Yeah. How about if this application is done and it's working, and it doesn't have the Facebook button versus it has the Facebook button? Which one is better? Has the Facebook button. Even though we are targeting Facebook users now instead of everybody.
Not exactly. It's kind of an additional feature. So if you have Facebook, you can use it.
So actually, Facebook users kind of have a benefit from it, but it's kind of a mutual benefit, because with that you don't need to have necessarily a database anymore, your own servers. You could just publish it somewhere, maybe not necessarily Facebook, maybe Sports Tracker or somewhere else. If you don't want to bother with it, you can still make a pretty good interface and app in general, but you somehow delegate different functions to different places. The login could be also done with the Facebook login. So think about it, and also not just Facebook, but Google Plus or all these other integrations. They do affect your target audience very much, and it should always be in your mind.
This can also be related to the fitness exercises like people normally do for the calorie loss.
Yes.
This can be fit with that. And
yeah, well, when your app has Superman there, then it's kind of thinking that people want to look like him or whatever, and it's also tied to the weight loss or the exercising aspects. Okay, now I think we will have a 10 minutes break, and meanwhile in the break, if you are bored, you can watch me draw a new icon for our app. So we want to have it beautiful, not just working. Right, so I think we can continue now. Going back to the main function, something we didn't do before is, if we do have success here, so if our location is just fine, let's do the init controls. Or actually, the controls should be done regardless. So let's just do them when the map is loaded, so in the main function. Okay, now going back to our main screen here, something doesn't work. Any ideas? For some reason this init controls doesn't seem to work. So in the main function here, I'm trying to debug. It's not there. Okay. Saving the file, refreshing the page, not there. Control F5, it's there. Cache, browser cache. So browser cache is this thing that the browser does once it loaded something, like an image for example. It's not going to load it again because it takes time. It takes it from the browser cache, which is a memory on your browser, temporary memory. And in this case, it cached the JavaScript file. So it cached this main.js from a while ago. Remember that this cache can be problematic, and if you are ever coding and you're like, it's not working, something is wrong, this might be the reason. So refresh with Control F5, or also possible to go in your settings from this developer tools and
there's another shortcut. You can right-click the refresh button.
right-click that.
Over there, beside the back button of the browser, you can right-click the refresh button.
Right-click.
Yeah. Empty cache.
Ah, thank you. Okay, that's great. There is also an option here that always empties it somewhere, but I'm not going to look for that anymore. So it's possible to make these developer tools, if they are open, it will always clear the cache, so you don't have to think about these things. But not so important. So let's go back now that it works. So now we have this collection. The buttons appear here, going back, start, stop, save and delete, and then going back to the main screen, but it's not doing anything. So it's just able to move around the things, but not to actually start any of the processing here. So let's see how to add functionality to our system. Okay, now going back to the controls, we said here start tracking, actually start tracking. So one thing that we want to do here is the screen variable that we defined up here. We want to set it to the tracking screen so that we know that we are on the tracking screen. Something like that. And stop tracking should take me to the publishing screen. View collection should take me to the this collection screen. So I want this variable to really tell me where I am in the application at all given times. So collection screen, publishing, tracking, and then main. So whenever I have this init controls, I want it to be back to main. So that means that we are back into main. I think everything is done now. So now we can go to our location handler. So this location handler class, if you remember, it had this working with the location, and on location update is when we get new information from our location sensor. So here I want to see if I'm going to track or not. So we are getting a new location, we're moving the marker, but if the screen is on the tracking screen, I also want to do something else. So this is where I'm going to put in memory the different points that I'm recording. So this is quite easy. I have this root array that I defined before, and I'm going to push into it a new object. So this object is going to have a latitude component, and I'm going to take the new location dot latitude method. So this lat_lng has a latitude method to get it from there. LNG component, and time is also important if we want to get speed later on. So the time component now, basically. So get the time from the date component. Now also useful to do is to show this route on the map. So we have this Polyline object from Google Maps API, and we want to give it the points that are in this groute object. Now, how do we do that? I don't know. I'm going to have to open the reference, so something like that. I'm looking for the JavaScript reference for the Polyline object. We will see next time when we program the native code that it's a little different from the one in the native, but somewhat similar still. And now looking for Polyline here. Okay. For the Polyline class, so we have get path here, so we could get the path, or set path. So set path is the function that I'm going to call, and I'm going to give it I'm going to give it the route. Let's just see what happens. So I'm going to save, go back to our main screen, refresh, and I'm going to turn now on this this tool here. I'm going to just click around, move Superman a little bit, and nothing really happens. He just moves a little bit, and now I'm going to press this start button, put this tool again, move him again, and still nothing happens. So I would have expected to see some trajectory there. Okay. And nothing happening there. So let's see first if the root object, it's empty. So nothing is happening with our root. Why? So the screen 2. So 2 means here that that we are indeed on the tracking screen. So basically this is true. So it should go there and give new locations to this root object, but for some reason it's not. No other choice but to debug. So I'm going to go back to this location handler.
Maybe it's a cache issue.
It is the cache issue. Thanks. But you know, notice here, so immediately when you start debugging, on-location update is not the same anymore. So I did save it, but refreshing with the clear cache, now it's maybe going to work. So move him a little bit. So still no line, and now with the start button on, I'm gonna try to move him again. Still nothing.
I think like if you use the method like an action, action and the get method.
Get method.
Yeah.
You mean the get path?
Yeah. And like the action at first. So.
Well, it seems to work. Now it seems to work for some reason, but I don't know why it missed one point there. I think because it was the tracking was not on immediately when I pressed that, so the first point is somehow lost. I can live with that. Usually you record every second or so, so 1 point missing at the beginning, it's not going to be a total disaster. Okay, so now we have something there. I'm going to stop the tracking, and now this stop and delete is not going to do anything for the moment. So yeah, let's try to get more functionality because we don't have enough things here. So the root is there, the polyline is there, so we have now a way to store these, to record the points, but how do we save the points? So we can move on to this save tracking and think, how do we save the tracking? So how do you know a way to save information in your browser so that it's still there next time you go to the page? Yeah. Cookies?
Maybe not writing a lot of information.
What about local storage?
Sorry?
Browser's local storage?
Yeah, local storage is also one thing, but more general, I would say it can be done with cookies. So some ways of doing it, but we can do it with cookies for now. And I think I'm gonna try to speed up things a little bit and maybe copy some file here. So a new file, this cookies.js, is going to be empty for the moment, but I am magically going to paste in it 2 functions, which I found from this W3 schools. They are easy functions, it's nothing too difficult. This document cookie is going to be the root thing that you are working with, but they are a bit higher level functions. They can set a cookie with a name and a value and an expiration date, or they can retrieve a cookie with a given name. Yeah, if it is not expired yet. So cookies are these you can consider them as persistent variables, so they will be there all the time, but they do have an expiration date. So need to consider also that. Basically, it will mean that you are going to put it with a very high expiration date if you want it to last forever. And I think we might want to do that. Okay, now in the safe tracking, so I want to set the cookie. We can just give it a name, so maybe we call it collection. And now it only works with strings. So we want to store basically our root, right? So whatever we want to store, it's not a string. And can we convert it to a string? Do you know any way of converting something into a string? Sorry?
String value of.
Value of. So we have this G root. It's going to get now some values because I pressed start, but they will be on the same. They will be in the same location, I think. So he's now tracking, and there is a small dot appearing next to him there. But so value string value. Maybe toString.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem to work. It's making this this object printing.
Maybe a map and then something on the edge object.
It means you need to implement some more things.
Yeah.
So this is something we will talk about after a week. But yeah. So JSON is something we will talk after a week. But you just need to know that if I'm going to give it an object there, it's going to output for me something that looks like this. It's a readable format, so you can still read the individual latitude, longitude values. So I'm going to use it here to store it in my collection value. Otherwise, if I delete the tracking, I'm not going to store anything in the cookies. I'm just going to init the controls. And since I'm here in the init controls, what I should also do here is empty the root. So we have the root object, which was an array. We will need to empty it. Otherwise, it's going to append, so it's going to continue. If you want to track again after you stop, it's going to start to add more and more points to the previous ones. I want just to solve this problem by, not keeping those points anymore. And also, it would be a good idea, I think, to set a path for the polyline to be this empty root now. So also the polyline, if I'm not going to modify it, it's still going to be the red line on the map. So there are two objects, the root, which is the path, the points array, and this polyline, which is just a constructor that it's just a construct that keeps the line on the map all the time. So I just don't want it to become confusing in any way. So I'm saving these files, and I need to remember to add this new cookies.js. So if you are working with cookies, these two functions are very common. If you Google them, you will find them almost instantly, but I didn't want to bother explaining them too much. So refreshing the page with the cache this time. I'm going to start the tracking, and I'm going to move his position a little bit. So yeah, and let's say this is enough. I'm going to stop the tracking, and I'm going to save. So now when I saved, the line disappeared from the map because it's done. If I go to get a cookie, it has something there.
So there must be confirmation in something indicating that.
Yeah, of course, that it was successful. It was successfully saved. Yeah, it should be, but let's not worry about that, not yet at least. So let's just trust that it's going to happen, even though, in theory, there might not be enough memory to solve this, to store this into the cookie. Now, I refreshed the page. It's still there. So it's a persistent variable. It's something that you can still dig up many times if you are coming there. And it's the mechanism that we are going to use here for how to reload the information. Okay. So let's do that. We have our main code here, and we haven't used this collection or collection index in any way. So our collection, before we initialize the controls, I want our collection to be equal to get cookie collection. And this is really what I want to serialize. So remember that this G root is just one root, but we want to keep in memory many roots. So when I had this this control here where I'm saving the tracking, I don't want to save one root. I want to save the collection button, but also the collection object. Sorry, but also where is this collection object? Because at the moment it's empty. It's always empty. At the moment you stop tracking, and this is when we now move to the publishing screen. Oh, sorry, actually here. When we save the tracking, we might choose to add the new root that we have into that we have recorded into the collection first, and then serialize. This is called serializing the collection object. So sorry if I'm a bit confusing here, but anyway, we will store this type of collections and yeah, and not the roots themselves.
But after storing the root in the collection, you need to clear that root, right? So for a new,
Yeah.
unless it will continue the previous one.
Yeah. No. So this is when I'm saving the root, but then I'm initializing the controls after the root is saved, and then I'm clearing the new root in the initializing function. Yeah. So initializing means that everything should be set to basic. Now I'm worried because this format here is not correct. It's one root, but it should be an array of roots. So I should delete this cookie somehow, and I don't know how to do it. Maybe. So keep an eye on it. So it starts with a right bracket here, and then a curly brace. Now it's empty. It's nothing that I tried to remove it, and now I'm going to start tracking again. I have some point there, so now I'm going to stop and save it. Oh. So something is not a function. Any ideas? Oh,
It's not an array anymore.
I goofed up. Now I'm just trying to sort out the mess that I did. So. Oh, okay, yeah. It's not a big problem. This place where I'm reading the cookie, now it's a string. So the cookie is in string format. I need to be able to read it again, parse it again into an object. So this is done with the JSON parse function coming from there. So a little bit complicated thing there, but I think now it should work. So I saved it. So now the difference from before is that it has one more bracket here at the beginning. And that's really because now we can store two roots. So let's move the guy a little bit more. I'm going to record another root. So I'm going to move him again and have another root here. And when it's done, I stop it and save it again. So now if I look at my cookie, I have the first root that started here and ended here. So this one object ends with another right angle bracket here, and then the second root starts here and ends here. So I have two different root objects inside this collection. So now if I refresh and I print this G collection object, I have two arrays. First root has 2 points, second root has 3 points. Each of them have latitude, longitude, and a timestamp at the moment. Alright, so this is now somewhat progressing. We are still not able to view our collection. So when I press here, I still have this 0, and I'm supposed to see the first root, the second root, whatever roots are. So I think that will be the last functionality that we will add now. And yeah, let's try to do that. So we had two different functions in the index. We had the left and the right with the move collection left and move collection right buttons here, which have never been implemented. So I'm going to go back to the controls. I have the view collection, but these are something that needs to be there. And another function which I want to call is show collection item. So it's not existing at the moment, but I want to make it. So we have a variable here for the collection item, which we set that index. So we want to show the first root at the beginning when we open the collection. So let's just make this index here 0. When we move to the left, we want to make this index decrease. Right? So we want to show the previous root. And when we move to the right, we want to make this collection index increase to show the next root. Of course, some safety checks would be if this index is greater than 0, then you could still decrease. Otherwise, you're going to get to negative numbers, and you don't really want to do that. And moving to the right is also something important. So we have our object, the collection array, has a length, but it has to be with the -1 there. Otherwise, otherwise it's going to have the value at the length of the array, which doesn't exist in JavaScript. So a little safety check also there. And in each case, I want to call this show collection item after we have changed the item that we are viewing. and same goes here. So after we put the first element to view it, then show the collection item. So what does showing the collection item mean? Means we take our polyline, set path, we look at in the collection at the index that we have here. Now it would be good to pass here the parameter for index. I will let you do that maybe. Working with global variables all the time is not a good idea. So this is global variable. So now the polyline has a value. I'm going to save it and see what happens. So I'm going to refresh, go to the collection. Nothing seems to happen. Or does it? Okay, so there are two roots there. Somehow hard to find. They are there, and there is a Superman blocking one of the roots, but it's just fine. He can always fly somewhere else. But now he's moving my map also with me, so things that make usability difficult, and also this 0 here doesn't change anymore. So let's modify also that. So this root index had the value of 0 before. Our show collection item has to modify somehow the value of this root index to something to do with the collection index. So I really don't like that thing, which is why you should install something else when you're doing web programming. Some other libraries that help you work with these things, but we don't cover them because it's just too much new things that I think are difficult to learn. We already see about the Google Maps and this HTML5, so sticking to basics. Now, the value for the index, nobody starts counting at 0, so I would put a +1 there. And now have this kind of / and check also how many roots do we have. So how many things we have into the collection. Refresh the page and some error.
You have to do equals, no?
Thank you. That saved my something. So this inner HTML is not a function, it is an attribute. You do not call it by argument of a function. You call it, you assigned it by equals, and you put the value there. Okay, so 1 out of 2. Somehow it's very small. So just a quick fix here, even though definitely these should go in CSS. So I'm going to use the same value as
modifying the style of the button.
Sorry?
Modifying the style of the button, not the style.
Thank you again. I'm really getting tired. I didn't expect today to be so tiring, but it did. Okay, so now it's a bit better. So now it's showing the first root and the second root, but somewhere far away outside the map. So let's look at that. Let's see, can I get the bounds for the root? And this is a problem. The bounds, by bounds I mean this. So how do I get the rectangle that fits in my screen from the root? I would expect this to be a function that is included in the API, and it's not. I have to calculate it myself. Basically, I have to get the minimum value, the maximum value, the minimum value, and the maximum value in each of the latitude, longitude cases, and move the map, position the map there. But the Polyline function is incomplete, in my opinion. We will see next time in the Android that the Android API does have the function. So some things that you just need to learn. If you look for it here, you won't be able to find it. But oh boy, I don't have the function. Yeah, I'm gonna have to Google how to do this. Or, yeah, I'm gonna have to Google how to do this. I thought I made a copy of it, but I'm gonna try to find how to get the bounds of a polyline in Google Maps API v3, and I'm going to hope that somebody has this function that I will copy, and I'm going to paste somewhere in my main file after my map has loaded. So anywhere inside this main is going to be okay. So if you notice here, it's taking the object, the Polyline object from Google Maps, and it's adding it a getBounds function. Now if I go back here and I take maybe okay, why is this? Yeah. So if I take the G Polyline object and I write getBounds, I'm not going to find anything. But if I'm going to save this file and refresh the page, now I do find something. So I have the getBounds function that I manually added here. And let's put the first root. So now I'm showing the first root. If I call the getBounds, is going to give me some special object that is a Google Maps object, this lat.lng bounds. Anyway, I can take the map, and fit bounds is a function. You can find it in the reference. I want to fit the bounds from the polyline like that. So I'm going to get the bounds and fit it to the map. It shows me the route, and then jumps back to Superman. So I want to, so I see the route, and I want to look at it, and I can't because Superman wants to attract attention. But anyway, this is the function that I need to call here in the controls after I show the collection item and I set the path to the polyline. I want to fit the bounds to the path. And finally, the last thing we're going to do, okay, two more things we're going to do, but this is the last programming thing we're going to do, is okay, maybe three more things we're going to do. I have 8 more minutes, I think. Let's see how it goes. So yeah, what was I doing? Oh yeah, so on location update, I don't want the map to set the center to Superman's location if we are on the collection screen. So if we are on the collection screen, I don't want to do it, but if we are not on the collection screen, I want to do it. So now I'm going to go back, refresh the page, go to the collection, see the first route, see the second route, which probably cache, maybe. Oh. Oh. So, is this really what I named it before? If the screen is not the collection screen, set the center to the new location. Okay. Root is not there, but at least Superman is not bugging up anymore. The root is actually there. this is a problem with Google Maps. So it's a problem with Google Maps. The functions are there. It needs some kind of hack to get it done. It will not happen in the native. So this is again one of the small things. They seem to take care much more of the native API than they take care of this JavaScript API. So if you combine this function with moving the map at the same time as drawing something, sometimes problems happen. You can fix it by adding some timeout. First move the map and then after a few milliseconds draw something, and it's going to work. But I'm not going to do that now because I want to show you some other thing. This app you will be able to test, so you can test it on your phone. This is the Android emulator, and I'm going to go now to this address there. So I actually went beforehand. For some reason this it's possible, yeah, cache issue, because I loaded before some other page here. But let's see. So this thing is a tool that you can set the different coordinates to Superman. So now he gets these coordinates from here. But even much better, you have a possibility to load the route. And I loaded here one of my cycling paths before, so from Mopsy. And if I press this play button, basically what it's going to do, it's going to continue to move Superman on the map as I have went there. So you can see the numbers moving on the right. So it's simulating my cycling path from a year ago. It's a really nice tool, I think. And now if I press the start button, I'm going to see this line coming there as he's going. I could decide to stop, and maybe I choose to save the route. Maybe I want to start again. So see how it's much easier now to do this. Stop again, save again. So now my collection should have this one route and the second route, which I just recorded from him moving as we talk on the map. So this is quite a useful tool even for debugging web applications. When you test, remember HTTPS. If you don't put HTTPS in front, it's not going to work. It's not going to access your, it's not going to allow for your location to be obtained. So it needs this secure connection. But when I update this on my on the web page of the course, I will put it there, so you can click it and then you can test it there. And testing will be very important, because this will have bugs. So it may seem like a simple app that we could do it in one lecture. It's not as simple as you think, and it will have some unexpected behaviors and some bugs. And if you test it, write them down, and next week we can take care of them. So that's one thing. And second thing, I'm going to do one update to this app by myself. It's an optional update, but I think it's quite important. I'm going to make Superman not fly backwards. So now he's going that way, and it doesn't look very super if you ask me. How do you do it? Because I went here to the reference, and I went to marker object, to the marker class, and I was really looking for something like set location, set rotation, and it's not there. And then I thought, okay, maybe the icon of the marker has the set rotation, but it doesn't. The native API, what we will see next time, it has it. The only way I thought how to fix this is to go here and do this. So basically draw him at the multiple angles and replace the icon every time he moves, depending on his direction of travel, with the new icon. It's gonna be a bit fidgety because I didn't have the patience to go anywhere lower than at every 45-degree turn, but yeah, but it's gonna work. And if you ask me, it's going to make this movement much more appealing somehow, and also worth it. Like, who would really use the app if he sees movement like this? It seems like it's not a polished app, and you haven't really given enough patience with it. Right, so that's it. Tomorrow we will learn how to package this as an Android application, and we will also start, at least, maybe also finish, to make exactly the same functionality in native Android. Maybe we finish after in the following week, we have to see, but the main thing is that I'm not going to rush this. I'm going to try to look at your faces and see if I'm getting to at least some of you here, so that you're not just waiting for, not just waiting for the lecture to end. So see you next week.